Alright, what's up? Today I want to talk about this thing. I want to talk about my turtle tank. I want to talk about the Canopy build that I did for this, as well as kind of everything to it. I want to get into why I did it, how I did it, and kind of what I like and what I don't like that I did about this whole setup. So that's what I want to do. So to start with, and I apologize for the shadow, the lighting in my house is not great. To start with the tank. So the tank was purchased used from a pet store that was going or that was having a sale about from all their products. This was actually previously a sump filter tank. The best I can find for the measurements that I took and used an online calculator, it's somewhere north of 100 gallons. It's about the best I got. It is very big. It's not a small tank by any means. My brother actually purchased this for a lizard, and then when his lizard tragically passed away, I was able to pick it up off of him and reuse it for my turtles. Before anyone asks, no, I had no idea if it held water or not. I just winged it, filled it with water and everything, and so far so good. Inside the tank, I do have two red-eared sliders. Again, I'm going to try and get out of the shadows here. Two red-eared sliders, one larger, one smaller, as well as, I believe it's just a common pleco. He is rather large. He blends in well with the turtles. He kind of hangs out with the turtles well. Hi, Paw. Hangs out with the turtles well. He's too big for them to kind of really get after. He swims away. He's quick. So that establishment of family there kind of works out good. Everything else on this is all by me. So obviously, a tank this big, you can't exactly just snap your fingers, get a stand for. The stand for this thing, and I'll get into everything that's under here, don't worry. The stand for this thing, it's way too dark in here, but it was built using, I believe it's King of DIY, his videos on building stands. So he has a ton of different videos, which are all really good. I like all of them. I actually used a couple more of his things on this. But I used just his generic tank build, or a tank stand build, to build the stand for this tank. Again, it is large. You can't just go out and buy a stand that big. So I built that. It's all out of 2x4. It worked really well. The outside of this thing took a little more time. Okay, I'm going to try to put a picture up of what I had previously on the top of this. All of this on the outside was not here. We had just a window screen mesh that we had kind of put together. You can go to Menards, you can go to your local hardware store, and you can buy a kit to build a window screen. We purchased that, and we actually built a window screen to go over half of this tank. And then on the other half, we had a basking area that you can go into, any pet store, and you can purchase those. We bought, it was used, but we bought the biggest one that they sell. It did not fit completely over the tank, so we had to kind of make some things work with different pieces of aluminum that actually came in the window screen kit, and it worked. The turtles did go on the basking area, obviously heat lamp and UVB bulb up top, so they did go into the basking area, but it didn't really look how I wanted it to. I wasn't super pleased with it, so I kind of devoured this challenge. So let's get to everything else. So the bottom, top, basking area, everything, that is all one piece separate from the stand. So the goal of building this was, we live in a rental house. I did not want to have something all pieced together that I would have to rip apart if and when we decide to buy a house and move, or do any work to the tank. I didn't want to have to tear apart a million things just to get at my tank. Okay, so the whole platform up top and the bottom here are all one. So I can actually, and I would for this video, but I'll get to why I'm not, but I can actually grab the whole setup with removing the basking area. I can pull the whole thing out and the tank will still be there on the stand, sitting just fine, because it's all separate. All of this is actually separate. It all pulls out. Now, this is no small task. I give that props to anyone who would attempt something like this, but I want to get into how I did it, I guess, a little bit. So up top, you can see that's just wide open. That goes into their basking area. On the basking area, it's just some turf that I actually picked up. I'm in the Midwest. I picked it up from Menards. Some people are gonna say, like, what's a Menards? It's just a hardware store. It's like a Lowe's or Home Depot. But that's our hardware store. It's my favorite hardware store. So I went in there. I got a whole roll of that actually for the previous basking area setup, and I hot glued it on there. And I think I have probably about 50 feet of it. So I had a ton of it, so I did it on this basking area as well. They seem to really like that. It doesn't burn or doesn't singe or anything from the UVB or from the heat lamp, which maybe is, you know, something I shouldn't have been worried about, but I definitely was with a heat bulb. But it did not. It's worked great. It works really well on the ramp going into the water, so they can actually grip onto that, as opposed to a smooth surface, or with the basking areas that you'll buy from the store that are kind of pre-made. They can be a little smooth, so it can be hard, even with their claws, to kind of grip on that because there's nothing for them to grip. So I put turf on there. It's worked really well. You'll notice, too, the outside of this is just plain plywood. I mean, no colors or anything like that. The inside of this, however, is blue, and that is not just regular blue paint. This is, again, another king of DIY hack, I guess we'll call it, that I picked up. That is actually pond seal like paint, I guess. Anything and everything on this that was going to be exposed directly to water, I wanted sealed, I wanted covered. Obviously, you can see the ramp is actually completely submerged in the water. Again, obviously, because they need to be able to get up it. I knew that that would be an issue going into this, that wood, you know, was going to swell from the water. It was also going to mold, rot, do all sorts of nasty things. So I needed to figure that out before any of this actually was put together. I had done a ton of research on building this type of thing. King of DIY has videos on making plywood or wooden fish tanks. And this is what he uses to line all of those. And so I kind of putting together in my head of, well, if it's good to be submerged in water in a fish tank, it should be good to be around water. It made sense to me. I think it still makes sense. So I actually went ahead. It was a gift to me at Christmas. I put it on my Christmas list, and it was gifted to me. And so I covered everything on the inside here that was going to be near the water. You can see all the way in here, all down there. Anything that's on this inside, you can kind of see it's glossy there. For both sides is covered in that pond sealer. This is actually remnants of the window screen that we built to put on top. I went ahead when I had built this whole setup, and so we didn't need the window screen anymore. I went ahead and cut the screen, kept that kind of, recycled that so that we had this mesh viewing area so we could still see them, still enjoy our turtles when they come up here. We can see how big they're getting, obviously. The one is about the size of a dinner plate, so he's getting huge. But we wanted to be able to enjoy these turtles, see them kind of wherever they're at, so we'd use that mesh there. Thinking of doing all of this, I didn't want anything sealed. I wanted it to look nice. So if we go over here to a normal setup of a fish tank, okay, this is a normal fish tank stand, pop again. It's got these two doors on the bottom. I really like that setup. I think it's a cool, it's aesthetically pleasing, right? Friends come over and they see that, you can hide all your stuff in there. And I liked that idea, and I wanted to mimic that idea in building this whole thing. So there was two doors put in, handles, hinges, all that stuff. Underneath was all the stuff that I didn't want kind of out and about. So we have our big canister filter down there. The dog is very interested. A big box of all the chemicals that I use for all of my tanks. A pot that I actually use to boil any wood that I'm gonna put in tanks, my driftwood. Come on, pup. And the other side, again, just more storage. Those are the buckets that I use for filling my tanks and for holding different things. Again, I wanted this to be something that, yeah, we're gonna use for, the turtles, and it's gonna look nice, but I also wanted it practical. So built-in storage on the bottom. Again, with the top, I knew that the basking area was only gonna take up part of the top, which left this big side, and I didn't just feel like it should be left blank. So I put in another little door up here for more storage. So we have some fish food up here, different, foods that we use to feed our aquatic animals. But again, I also wanted things to work for me. I didn't just want something that was single use necessarily. So like the bottom, it's storage, but it's also housing my filter. There's a big extension plug in there with everything plugged in underneath so that everything's kind of seamless, nothing on the outside showing. So it hides a lot. It's kind of multi-use. So I did the same thing with this. This is just a single piece of plywood in here holds everything that I need it to hold, nice and thick, but it also is not actually connected to anything. Again, that pond sealer on the bottom because it's in direct contact or closest contact. So in here, I can get into the tank again. For what reason? For what I need to get into that small of an area into the tank, there isn't much, if I'm honest. It kind of worked better in my head than it did anything else. We thought maybe we'd be feeding them through that. We actually just feed them through the top there. We just kind of drop food in. So the really only reason that I've used this is if you have turtles and you know, they like to move things. So you can see right on top here, you can see the filter rod. That's for, you know, shooting the water out. That's the, I don't know, the exit. They like to move that. They like to pull that off. A lot of times they'll pull it right off because they're trying to like climb on it. So the suction cups get pulled off the side of the tank. So this, having this access allows me to reach in and actually, you know, adjust that and put it back on the wall, do all that type of stuff to it. So again, really tactically used. I like that I did it. Is it exactly what I envisioned in my head as far as do I use it as? Not really. I don't use it that much. So I like that it's there, but it's not really necessary. Another thing that I did on this tank, or on this canopy setup, is really what it is, and it's what I'll call it, was I wanted to be able to move this thing. Like I said in the beginning, I wanted to be able to move it independent from the tank and the stand. So that is why I built it, so I could slide it in and out. Again, I'm not going to do that for this video, and I'll get into why, but I wanted to be able to. Now, if we can use our imaginations real quick, and I'll kind of show it, a ramp going into the water below the water line, which is in the tank, would not be able to slide in and out. So I kind of had to tackle the idea of how do I make it so that this ramp, which comes down into the water below this, okay, how do I make it so I can still slide the canopy in and out without that being an issue? And the answer, I went back and forth for hinges. Do I want to put hinges on it like a door so it would lift up? And what did I want to do? And what I came to was none of that. I do exactly like I did with the top here, where I just put a piece of wood in there. I did that. I cut, obviously, the ramp angle, you know, put all that together, painted everything, and then actually underneath, you can see right in here, there's a support there, there's a support at the end. So I can actually remove the basking area completely from the tank, or completely from the canopy setup, so that way, when needed, I can slide this whole thing in and out. Or if I have to do, if I'm gone for a good amount of time, I keep up pretty regularly on the water to make sure water levels are consistent. But if I have to do a whole 5-gallon bucket and do multiple trips into there, I can pull that whole thing out and I can actually access the water a lot better that way. So I'm going to try and do this on camera. It's a lot easier. Well, if it looks hard, I promise it's not usually that hard. Works really simply. This is just a PVC pipe setup. I had some extra PVC laying around, and hopefully in the picture that I'm going to try and put in this video of the previous setup, I actually had them on the top to hold the light. So I already had the pieces laying around. I was able just to put a screw in to make it so that this actually slides back and forth. So I'm going to go ahead and shut the lights off here. I am going to pull this off just to kind of set it off to the side a little bit better. Set that right there. And then all I get to do is reach in to the tank. I cut everything so that it was a little bit precise, so that I can remove the whole ramp, okay? In doing that, I'm gonna try not to get my floor in the house soaking wet, so I'm gonna try and swing this your way. Sorry if that scared you. In doing so, reach ya, I'm able to access the whole tank. So here's the rear support that I was talking about for the actual basking area. There's the front. You can see I notched it so that the ramp actually fit in there nice. You can see our big LED light underneath eventually. That's going to be kind of tweaked. I have some plans on how I want to do that, but this is getting us by in the meantime. And now I can access the rest of the tank. I can pour water in, or again, with this out, I can move this whole setup backwards. So it works. It works really well. I'm happy with it. There's some things I would change, and that's what I want to get into. Next, I've told you all about the good stuff about this thing. I want to get into the stuff that maybe I would have done differently, or had I, maybe done a little bit better research, maybe I could have figured out, maybe done differently, done better. So that's what I want to get into next. So one of the questions that I would ask, or anyone should ask, before building something like this would be why, okay? Why would you build something so big? Why would you go about, doing something that, as far as I'm aware, I can't find anything really online. If somebody's done it, let me know. But I've never seen anything quite like this put out in video or put in Instagram posts or anything like that. So why build this? Okay, the two turtles I have in here are red-eared sliders, and they do live a very long time. And so in doing a tank like this whole setup, I'm planning on having this for a very long time. My wife and I have discussed in moving, would we keep it? Would we do something different? I think doing a pond type setup, indoor pond setup with a pond liner would be really, really cool. However, the space and kind of doing all that stuff might not be there when the time comes to do that. So if not, this setup works really, really well for these guys. The larger of the turtles, I believe, is roughly about as big as he's going to get. The other turtle may follow suit, or I should say she's about as big as she's going to get. I believe it's female. The other turtle, we believe it's a boy or a male. He should grow a little bit bigger, but they're not going to really outgrow this tank. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'll do a pond setup, and that'll be a whole big process, and I'll enjoy that too. But I wanted them to have maximum swimming area of this whole tank because they are large, and I wanted them to have a basking area. And again, we're going to have these turtles for a long time. We have no intention of getting out of this hobby or any of our fish hobbies, fish tanks, or anything like that. Now, going into this process, I had done a little bit of woodwork or work with wood. I don't want to call it woodwork because I don't want someone to get mad. I'm a carpenter. I am not a carpenter. I built a table or two, a shelf, just for around my house when we were looking for something that we couldn't exactly find measurement-wise. I built it myself. Self-taught, never had any lessons on doing any of this. Please, for the love of God, don't look at any of these cuts and judge me because some of them are very, very much not straight. But going into this, I had no kind of knowledge of how to do it, so there's some things that I kind of wish I would have thought about a little bit better. Initially, I wanted this face piece here to cover the front of this tank, this whole black lip here, and the bottom I also wanted to come up to there. What I did when I built it, or when I measured it, and then wrote all my measurements down, I did not give myself enough clearance everywhere to really make that a reality. You can see on this side over here, there is a gap on that side, there's an equal gap on this side, and I'll give you a close-up, but I made the tolerances way too tight. So when I took my measurements, I tried to add on, maybe an inch, to thinking that an inch would be good enough clearance. And I made the mistake of not adding maybe 2 inches. My thought process was, oh yeah, an inch on both sides, that'll work. But I only added an inch to my initial measurement of the length, or the width, I guess. So in reality, I had about a 1/2 inch. Working with wood, I did have this outside, so it did kind of change a little bit. When I initially tried to slide this in, it did not slide in at all. The height was the same issue, where I took my measurements, but I made the tolerance way too tight. So it would not slide naturally, I should say. The height issue wasn't so much an issue. It did slide a little. The sides were much more of an issue. But what I didn't take into consideration with my height to make kind of where the basking area is, that portion, is I didn't take into account that LED light bar that you guys saw in underneath everything. So I went to slide this thing in. The top part was fitting, and it was fitting good. The tolerance worked out well for me. The height worked out well for me. However, there wasn't any room to put the LED light bar in there, which was a mistake on my part. I should have thought of that. I should have added a little bit more on that regard. But hindsight's always 20/20. The other thing that I didn't think of necessarily, or I did think of, but I just didn't really do my due diligence and go ahead and measure it physically, is I guesstimated the ramp length and the ramp angle. So you can see the ramp in here, and it does stick in the water, and we have seen both of these turtles go up on the basking area. There's no problem. However, I do wish I would have made the ramp longer, and I wish I would have made the angle not so sharp. I wish I would have tweaked it a little bit. You see a lot in the purchase basking areas that you can get from PetSmart or your local pet store. The angles are pretty sharp, and that's been a common theme. If you go to other YouTube videos where they talk about those products, they'll say the same thing. They'll say the angle's a little sharp, and then oftentimes they do say it's kind of hard to grip with the nails at that type of an angle. The turf that I put on there, the fake grass, it works really well for the grip, but the ramp angle, I wish it would have been a little bit different. I wish I would have made it a little more mellow, and then I wish I would have made the ramp actually longer to go deeper into the tank, so that way they could actually get up there a lot easier than what they can. Again, they both do go up there. I just wish it was easier on them. I do want to address kind of the width of this thing as well, a little bit deeper, a little bit more close up, so that way it can kind of be transparent. And anyone who's thought about doing something like this, you guys kind of know maybe what to think about. Hopefully you can learn from some of my mistakes here and what. So again, I mentioned two mistakes that I made. One was the height, one was the width. Again, you can see there's just a little gap on that side. Maybe you can't really see that gap, which is cool. There's a large gap on this side, okay? I did not make this thing wide enough to slide. When I went and tried to slide it in, it rubbed. It wasn't gonna happen. I tried and tried and tried. My wife kind of chuckled at me a little bit, but it wasn't gonna happen. I was trying my darndest to make it happen. It wasn't gonna happen. So what I actually had to do, if we come inside this little door here, I actually had to add spacers. I don't know if I can get it wholly here, but yeah, you can see that one. You can see there's a separate piece there. I had to actually add spacers to 4 different cross members to actually make this thing be wide enough. Again, when I did the initial measurements, I believe I only added maybe an inch. If you were going to do something like this, maybe keep in mind that, you know, wood does change a little bit. I wish I would have added maybe 2 inches or even up to 3 inches, so I had 1.5 inches of play each way. I think 2 inches would have got it done, but I think 3 inches would have just been better, would have been a little more seamless. With those spacers, you can see this side is not as seamless and pretty as this side is, okay? So there's a whole piece of plywood going all the way down on this side. Very pretty. No 2x4 showing. Everything's nice and seamless. When you come to this side, you can see it almost looks like I ran out of wood here. It's not. It's because I had to add a spacer in here to make everything actually line up and for this thing to be wide enough. Again, the other thing I mentioned was the height. So it was not high enough for us to still be able to fit our LED bar light for the tank in there, which was a bummer. That light was expensive, and there's different things we could have done. I went with the easiest option to make this thing work. So all I did was coming down here. You can just barely see it. But underneath the legs on either side, I added just a 2x4. I had 2x4s that were of length. So I went ahead and just put those underneath the leg. They're sticking out there. I stuck them underneath the legs of the Canopy, not the tank stand. Again, the tank stand is its own individual thing. But I put them underneath the Canopy so that way it raised it up. I mean, you can see this thing is no small. I think I'm 5'10". This is almost to me, so it's probably roughly 5 foot-ish. I could measure it, but I'm not going to. This thing is not small, okay? But we needed to be able to fit that LED light in there, so I kind of had to do what I had to do. If I did this thing differently, like I said, I would have kind of done the stereotypical measure twice, cut once, so that way I would have made it wide enough, and I would have made it tall enough. But, you know, it is what it is. I am happy with how it is set up. I will likely be changing this face setup so that way this can be covered. I won't be changing the top because that's just work I don't want to do, but I at least will likely be cutting a new face at some point so I can make it come all the way over and the bottom as well to make all that seamless. You can see this lined up almost a little bit better, but I wish it did come over all the way. All in all, again, I'd never done anything like this. This was kind of the first time I'd ever tried something to this level, but I am happy with it. I'm happy with how it came out. I would do it again. Like if I had to go back and, you know, oh, would you do it again? I would do it again. It was such a cool process to do. It took me way too long because I like to sit on things. I'm a procrastinator, but that's a whole other side story. I am happy with it. Those are the changes I would make. Again, it's just measurements. It's just making sure I would have done a little bit, you know, more hands-on research with this, and actually done it myself. Again, I've never seen a video on how to do anything like this, so I was winging it, and I think I winged it a little too hard. Other than that, I'm super happy with it. If you have any questions about it, definitely leave a comment. Let me know. If this is something that you want to try, I recommend just kind of do it, but, you know, maybe take my little pieces of advice there. Maybe in another video, when the time comes where I actually pull this thing out, I will record that. Again, I'm not going to do it today. It's a little too much work to do by myself, but it is possible. So maybe some other time when I do that, if there's enough interest in that, I may just go ahead and post that up as well. If not, well, just know it works. I promise. Anyways, thanks for watching. Hopefully you found something interesting. Maybe if you're doing this yourself, send it to me. I'd love to look at it, and I'd love to see other people doing this as well if they have turtles or aquatic animals like this where they want to do something cool. Anyways, thanks for watching. Have a good one.